The violin shattered on the pavement in slow motion, wood splintering, strings snapping like broken promises. 12-year-old Marcus froze, his fruit cart tipped over, oranges rolling into traffic. The woman standing over the wreckage wasn't screaming. That was worse. Her silence cut deeper than any words. "That was my grandmother's violin," Elena whispered, kneeling to gather the pieces. "It's worth $2,000. Marcus felt his world collapse. $2,000? He made maybe $15 a day selling fruit. His hands trembled as he stammered, I don't have that money. My family, we barely eat." This is a story about promises, redemption, and why one moment of grace can echo through decades. Before we continue, how may you drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and whether you believe people actually keep their promises. Elena looked at this terrified child, his clothes patched and repatched, shoes held together with tape. Something in his eyes reminded her of herself at that age, desperate, but not defeated. She pulled out a piece of paper and wrote down her address. "Make me a promise," she said quietly. "Promise that when you're rich someday, you'll come back and pay me." Marcus's eyes widened. "I promise. I swear on my mother's life, I will pay you back." Elena nodded slowly, then did something that would change both their lives forever. "I believe you," she said, tucking the paper into his trembling hand. "Now go home." But she had no idea that 2 decades later, a knock on her door would save her life. 20 years vanished like smoke, but Marcus never forgot the woman who showed him mercy when she could have destroyed him. He worked 3 jobs while finishing high school, washing dishes until midnight, delivering newspapers at dawn, tutoring kids on weekends. Every scholarship application, every rejection letter, every exhausted night, he remembered that broken violin and the promise written in his own blood. Meanwhile, Elena's life took a darker turn. Her music school, once thriving, couldn't compete with digital learning platforms. Students disappeared, bills multiplied. Then came the diagnosis: stage 3 cancer, treatments costing thousands she didn't have. She sat alone in her crumbling apartment, surrounded by medical bills and foreclosure notices, when she opened an old drawer. In the inside lay a faded piece of paper, a 12-year-old's promise, signed Marcus Rivera. She smiled bitterly. Of course he'd forgotten. Everyone forgets. But Marcus hadn't forgotten anything. His tech startup had just been acquired for $40 million. While celebrating with champagne and investors, he excused himself, went to his safe, and pulled out a worn piece of paper he'd kept for 2 decades, Elena's address. He spent weeks tracking her down. She'd moved twice, but he was relentless. When he finally found her current address, something in the property records made his blood run cold. Foreclosure proceedings, medical liens. She was losing everything. Marcus sat in his car outside her building that rainy Tuesday evening, a briefcase on his lap containing more than just money. His heart pounded. What if she didn't remember? What if she turned him away? He knocked anyway. The door opened slowly. Elena, 20 years older, frail from chemotherapy, stared at the stranger in the expensive suit. "You don't remember me," Marcus said softly. Then he pulled out a piece of paper, the original promise she'd written. "But I never forgot you." Elena's knees buckled. Elena gripped the doorframe, staring at the paper trembling in Marcus's hand. Recognition struck like lightning. "The boy with the fruit cart," she whispered. "The violin. I told you I'd come back when I was rich." Marcus's voice cracked with emotion. "I'm here to keep my promise." He opened the briefcase. Elena gasped. Stacks of hundreds filled every inch, but sitting on top was a document. Not just a check for $2,000, a check for $500,000. "I calculated 20 years of compound interest," Marcus explained, tears streaming down his face. "But then I did more research. I know about your cancer, about the foreclosure, about everything you're facing." Elena's hands flew to her mouth. "How did you? You saved my life that day. You could have called the police, sent a poor kid to juvenile detention, destroyed any chance I had at a future. Instead, you chose mercy." Marcus's voice grew stronger. "You taught me that one person's compassion can change the trajectory of an entire life." The money was staggering, but Marcus wasn't finished. He pulled out more documents, mortgage payoff papers, medical expense coverage, legal documents establishing something called the Elena Martinez Scholarship Fund for Underprivileged Music Students. "This is crazy," Elena sobbed. "Why, I don't deserve—" "You deserve everything," Marcus interrupted. "That 12-year-old boy became a software engineer because of you. Built a company worth millions because you gave him a chance when no one else would. This isn't charity, this is justice." But here's where the story takes an even more unexpected turn, because what Marcus didn't know was that Elena had done something with his original promise that would shock him to his core. She'd framed it and hung it in every music classroom she ever taught in, telling her students, "Faith in people is never wasted." Marcus stepped into Elena's small apartment, and his breath caught. Despite the peeling paint and worn furniture, one wall stood out like a shrine. Photographs covered every inch. Hundreds of students, children of every background, each one holding an instrument. And in the center, under glass, hung a faded piece of paper. His 12-year-old handwriting, "I promise to pay you back when I'm rich. Marcus Rivera." "I told every student your story," Elena explained, her voice weak but steady. "I told them that character isn't about where you start. It's about who you choose to become. Some of them are doctors now, teachers, musicians. They all know about the boy who kept his promise." Marcus couldn't speak. 20 years of grinding, building, succeeding. All of it suddenly made sense. He hadn't just been working for himself. He'd been proving that people like Elena weren't fools for believing in human goodness. Over the next 3 months, Marcus didn't just hand Elena money and disappear. He became family. He accompanied her to chemotherapy appointments, hired the best oncologists, renovated her apartment while she recovered. But his biggest project was something else entirely. The old building where Elena's music school once operated sat abandoned. Marcus bought it, gutted it, and transformed it into something spectacular. A state-of-the-art community music center offering free lessons to any child who couldn't afford them. On opening day, Elena stood before a gleaming new building with her name above the door, the Elena Martinez Center for Musical Excellence. 500 children from poor neighborhoods waited inside with brand new instruments. "You gave one boy a chance," Marcus whispered. "Now you'll give thousands that same opportunity." But the final twist? Elena had one more lesson to teach. 3 years later, Elena stood cancer-free in her music center, and watching a 12-year-old girl named Sophia nervously prepare for her first violin recital. Sophia reminded Elena of young Marcus. Same desperate hunger to prove herself, same impossible circumstances. The girl's father had lost his job. They were facing eviction. Sophia's hands shook as she resigned her bow. "I can't do this, Mrs. Martinez," Sophia whispered. "My family, we might be homeless next month. How can I think about music?" Elena smiled and walked Sophia to her office. On the wall hung that original promise, now legendary among the students. But next to it hung something new. A photograph of Marcus handing Elena that briefcase, tears streaming down both their faces. "That man was once exactly where you are," Elena said gently. Terrified, poor, convinced the world was stacked against him. But he made a promise and kept it. Not because it was easy, but because someone believed in him when he had nothing. She pressed an envelope into Sophia's hands. "Marcus created a fund for students like you. Your family's rent is covered for 6 months. Your only job is to practice, improve, and someday, when you're successful, remember this moment." Sophia broke down crying. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank Marcus. And 20 years from now, when you've built your own success, find some terrified kid who's lost everything and show them the same mercy." Here's the moral. A single act of compassion doesn't just change one life. It creates ripples that touch generations. The kindness you show today might save someone 20 years from tomorrow. If this story moved you, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment sharing a time someone showed you unexpected mercy. Let's build a community that believes in second chances. Where are you watching from? And what promise are you keeping today? Your engagement keeps these stories alive, so hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to believe in human goodness again.